The silence of the night. Mr. Beats, a man whose name was inspired by a famous internet gamer, was actually quite different from the persona his name suggested. With his dark hair, broad physique, and ever-confident demeanor, he was known for his cool composure. He had been fascinated by paranormal events for years, but this time, he was about to encounter something that would introduce him to a completely different world. One day, Mr. Beats received a letter from his old friend Jack, a paranormal investigator. Jack had reported strange occurrences at an orphanage, where odd noises were heard at night and unseen entities began appearing in the shadows. Mr. Beats, intrigued by such phenomena, decided to visit Jack without delay. The orphanage was located in a small, remote village. Mr. Beats arrived in the village in the evening. The sky had already darkened, and a deep silence enveloped the village. The orphanage was situated on the outskirts, surrounded by dark trees. As Mr. Beats approached the building, a growing sense of unease stirred within him. Upon entering, he felt a strange energy permeating the cold walls of the orphanage. Normally fearless, Mr. Beats wouldn't take such feelings seriously, but this time was different. As Jack had described, he was alone in the darkness, yet he felt the unmistakable presence of something watching him. Every step he took seemed to be followed by unseen eyes. As he wandered through the dark corridors, the sounds of children's laughter and cries echoed in his ears. The noises and the fleeting images of children playing in the shadows began to wear on Mr. Beats' nerves. Suddenly, a small door in front of him creaked open. This was the mysterious room Jack had discovered. Mr. Beats approached the door and entered. In the middle of the room stood an old, dusty chest. On top of the chest lay a photograph. The photo depicted the children who had lived in the orphanage, but one child stood out from the rest. His eyes were dark, empty voids, and his face was expressionless. Mr. Beats wanted to investigate who this child was, but suddenly, the light in the room went out. In the darkness, Mr. Beats' heart began to race. The air had turned cold, and his breath felt like ice. A sudden noise echoed, and the door slammed shut behind him. Mr. Beats tried to open the door, but it was in vain. He was alone in the room, or so he thought. Suddenly, he felt a cold breath on the back of his neck. His heart pounded as if it would burst out of his chest. He turned around and saw a silhouette standing by the door, shrouded in shadows. The figure moved closer. The black voids where its eyes should have been and its emotionless face shattered the silence. "What do you want?" Mr. Beats asked. But there was no answer. No sound. Only silence and fear. As the silhouette drew nearer, Mr. Beats' vision darkened, and he lost consciousness. When he awoke, Jack had found him lying in the darkness. Mr. Beats tried to explain what had happened, but Jack insisted it was just a dream. Yet Mr. Beats knew it was no dream. He could still feel that strange, lingering presence inside him. When he returned home, he sensed something was following him. Nothing would ever be the same again. After that night, Mr. Beats never spoke of the orphanage again. But the fear in his eyes reflected the horror he had experienced. Sometimes, in his sleep, the black-eyed child would appear, silently watching him.